DJ LeRoy.
NightWatchman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. You know what? I'm a little bit concerned though. I'm once again I'm seeing an attack on democracy, man, coming out of Tennessee, man. Sheesh.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what, man? I'm thinking that you know what makes things right? Music.
Music, and not just any kind of music.
Well, what kind of
American art form, right?
Ah, yes, that particular one. How'd you know? How'd you know?
Lucky guess.
Well, you know what? Why don't we do this? There is certainly a couple of organizations that we're going to bring out here, right? And including an artist who's, when I first heard him, and Robin Bell Stevens of Jazzmobile will tell you that I wanted him. I definitely wanted him to be on the show because his music just had me up, grooving, moving, shaking, you know, and that could only be Wycliffe Gordon. Bring him up.
All right.
Come on, man.
Welcome.
Well, my man, that's right. With of course, the instrument of perfection in the background, he knows how to do it. And NightWatchman, have you ever grooved any Wycliffe stuff, huh?
Absolutely, of course.
Okay. That's why you happen to actually know him too. I love this. Okay, so the other organization I definitely have to bring up here is the National Jazz Museum in Harlem. Bring out Tracy Hyter-Suffern, okay? Why don't you?
All right.
Tracy.
Welcome back.
Gentlemen.
Yes. All right. You know you're a veteran, right?
I'm so excited. I'm way more comfortable. I've got plenty of stuff to say. I'm ready.
Love it. Well, now, Tracy, you seem to have also brought some folks. Who have you brought here?
I did. I brought family. I brought with us first our trustee, DeLeon, who has jazz chops in his own right.
Nice. There he is. Al, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello,
everybody. Absolutely. And who else did you bring here, Tracy?
I brought someone who I thought, if you don't know who he is, Wycliffe may know who he is. You should know. He is a trumpet prodigy. Who was discovered by one of our jazz colleagues, Arturo O'Farrell, in Cuba, in Havana.
Oh,
this is Rodriguez-Peña.
Yes, my brother, welcome. Soul Out Prime Time. Good. And I already understand that you're probably in the greatest place in New York City, Harlem, baby.
Yes, I am.
Love it. Well, yes. Even Wycliffe, you know about that, huh?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, you know what, Tracy, not to be outdone, because both of you, the organizations have Harlem in their name. Why don't we bring out the two founders of Harlem Late Night Jazz, Dakota and C. Kelly Wright? Yes. All right.
Dakota, Pippins, C. Kelly Wright.
That's right.
Love it.
It's a jazz party.
It is a short-up jazz party. As a matter of fact,
hi, everybody.
Hey, well, I'm just wondering now, if you feel so inspired, Kylie and Wycliffe, I mean, you can blow off a couple of tunes. Just saying, okay?
All right.
He's ready.
Go get my trumpet.
All right, that's right. Take it from the bed, because I know it's in the bedroom. Absolutely. Well, you know what? Let's get this bad boy kicked off. Because first of all, I'm going to start off maybe with the National Jazz Museum in Harlem, and I want to actually understand that you guys are currently looking for a permanent home. Is that correct?
Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. I will throw to Al, but absolutely. Al, this is your baby.
Okay, Albert, take it away.
Well, we've been in the current location for quite a while, but we've outgrown it. We have aspirations and dreams to do a lot more. from the education standpoint, neighborhood, and actually entertainment. So we need a new space, and we're looking into fundraising for that. It's going to take a lot of money, of course, but we started and looking for a location, hopefully in Central Harlem.
Oh, okay. And let's say now we say Central Harlem, but you guys are flexible or amenable to any place in Harlem or north of 96th Street. What would you say?
We haven't reached that decision yet. Obviously, there are a lot of factors that go into it: transportation, the neighborhood, and all of that. So it's still in the planning stage.
Okay, beautiful. And you know what? I have to also say then, Wycliffe, a number of folks say that they remember when you also performed at Minton's.
Yes.
Can you speak about that experience? Was that your first time coming into New York to do some clubs, or was that just the cherry on top?
In terms of my career, maybe the cherry on top. That was a few years ago. And matter of fact, I think Stanley Crouch came out that night, the last time I performed at Minton. So my first club dates go back to probably the Village Vanguard with Winton back in the 90s. And, because that was my, that was how I got into the jazz scene. So the Village Vanguard, then I played, would go visit Smalls, sometimes Cleopatra's Nat'l. Very seldom when I find myself in clubs, but Robin Bell Stevens, she booked this club date at Minton's once they reopened and it became a tourist. So yeah, I was happy to play there, but that was on the tail end and not the front end of my club experience in New York City.
Absolutely. And one of the things I got to say also, Wycliffe, so your particular genre of music, you can do some straight ahead, but then you can also do some funky stuff coming out there. Now, funky, I don't necessarily associate coming out of New Orleans, but I hear in your music. Who were some of your influences, man?
Well, I love music. Just good music, period. I grew up in the church. My father played studied classical piano, but he played in church. So I heard gospel growing up. And a lot of people think that I'm from New Orleans. I just loved the New Orleans music once I got into jazz. But I'm from Augusta, Georgia. I'm from James Brown hometown.
Oh,
okay.
Hometown of Jesse Norman. And, but I'm deeply rooted and staunch in the music that comes from the South. So, and that's like a potpourri of things. So it can be classical music, it can be jazz, it can be, funk. But nonetheless, music that grooves. So whether it's swinging or whether it's like an even 8th or 16th note groove. But, that was my entree into the music, by recording. We didn't hear jazz in my household. Growing up, it was just gospel, maybe some country music because that's what they played on the radio. But always classical music. My father loved to play Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata, and that's what he studied. He taught piano lessons. But when I heard jazz on recording, that opened up that door, and down that rabbit hole I went.
Absolutely. And Callie, you have to let us know. Well, who discovered who? Did you discover the National Jazz Museum, or did they discover you?
Wow, that's so funny. That's actually, I know exactly the moment I met Tracy. It was during the pandemic. I have a band and we play a lot here in New York. And, when the pandemic came, suddenly no gigs. We were like, well, we spent like whatever time we had to be inside, a couple months. Then that summer, I remember that they took some precautions, but people could go out with the mask and like I started doing stoop concerts at my drummer's place in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy.
Wow.
And people started coming because that was like healing, And basically, I remember Tracy coming one day. And after I played, I started talking to her Like how, like she was like, oh, nice concert. I was like, oh, thank you so much. And then after half an hour, we actually started making connections. Like people we knew until we realized, she realized that was that kid that Arturo Farin had told her. And it was a really funny moment because we had been speaking for a little while, and then we were like, "Oh, you are Kali." Oh, I know who you are. And she was like, "I know who you are." And I was like, "Oh, really? You know who I am?"
Yeah, that Cali, yeah.
Nice. Oh my
so
god.
that, and really, like it was like since like day number one, like really good connection. I think like with some people you connect right away, and then it makes it easier to work and to create things.
Cali, when did you start playing?
Man, I started playing the piano when I was 7 years old. My grandmother was a singer in one of the most important Cuban bands in the 70s, El Niño Rivera, who was like a tercero. So she sang that. She studied also like classical voice, like opera, like lyrical. And then but because of the economy in Cuba after the 1959 with Fidel and stuff, you couldn't really make it playing classical music. So she started playing like like traditional and popular Cuban music, especially son and bolero and cha cha cha. Like
oh wow,
the established genres. So she helped me getting into music. Then I started the trumpet when I was about 9-10 years old. So it's been a little while now.
Absolutely. One thing for sure, and this is certainly something that you pride yourself in, Dakota, and this is the whole jazz history, the tree. So with many different branches, whatnot. You got to tell me that. When I look at this particular tree, will I see roots that actually come out of, let's say, the Caribbean, from Africa and other places? Tell me how it's structured.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. What Curtis is referring to is the jazz history tree. And if you go to your websites, jazzhistorytree.com, you'll see a history of this music going back before 1619. In fact, actually, I traced the root back to two African traditions, call and response and ring shout. And I see it as one art form. And what happens is that every generation creates branches. And I express that in the form of a tree all the way up to today's music. So certainly I have Afro-Cuban and Latin, reggae, calypso. They're included, and others included amongst 34 genres of music. And 100 videos are loaded so that the user can actually experience the music. And I researched along with Kelly and some others, and we wrote 600 to 900 words about each genre is referenced. And it's currently being used in a number of primarily New York City area colleges, college professors and high school teachers, and about to be in Iowa. So that's the jazzhistorytree.com. And, I'll say one other thing. I make the bodacious attempt to define this music. And, I was informed by a lot of people, including Eileen Southern, who wrote the seminal book, The Music of Black Americans, and Amiri Baraka and other folks, Randy Weston. But the definition that I have of this music, which is on the site under About the Jazz History Tree, is a simple one. There are a lot of, we know it's America's only original art form. We know that it's improvisational. But the definition that I use is jazz is simply the Black American soul. And by that, I mean spirit, perspective, worldview expressed musically. And every generation has had an expression, and it's home from our experience here in this Western Hemisphere. And the music also has a consistent message in terms of freedom from oppression, peace, love, joy, and of course it's spiritual. It's spiritual music. The academics call it improvisation. Improvisation is an academic word for something that, for a spiritual occurrence that academics explain. In the Black church, we said, let go, let God. The idea is that the universal spirit takes over the performer and it becomes something greater than the performer. The performer becomes some.
I think we may have lost it. You know what? I gotta. So Albert, you have to tell me. Night Watchman, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was gonna go to
Albert.
Yes. Hey, Albert. I gotta know what Dakota was just speaking about. Has jazz always spoken to your heart, to your soul?
Yes, it has. My father was really a big jazz fan. Ellington, Count Basie, Buck Clayton, Billy Eckstine. So I grew up with that. And maybe like a lot of other kids, I grew up to hate it because I heard it so much. And, you know, I was the era of Motown and Stax and Temptations and so on. And then when I got to college, like we find out a lot that our parents know more than we think they knew at the time. So I got back into the music and could really appreciate it. So that's how what attracted me to the Jazz Museum. And before that, I was on the board of WBGO. And still do it. In fact, I was at a birthday event at the Brooklyn Public Library recently, recognizing the birthday of Randy Weston. Someone mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And it was really nice with Danny Mixon and Alex Blake. So it was a good thing. So
beautiful.
That's how I got into it.
Nice. And see, Kelly, of course, knowing your background, remember you're coming out of stage and screen and theater. So did jazz also speak to you, or were you like me growing up? I was big into like what Albert said in terms of Motown, Stax. I mean, soul, R&B soul.
I'm a 60s baby. Yes, 60s. So I'm a soul singer, soul sister. It's also for me, but I mean, Saturdays and Sundays were dedicated to jazz in my house. Saturday mornings, jazz was the cleanup music. And so it was a love-hate relationship with it. But it was the music that fueled my upbringing, and it was the music that I think my parents had on when they were rocking me, so it's in my body. And I was a dancer originally, so I mean, I also was awakened to the music from that perspective. And so coming back to New York after 20 years in California, and jazz was there to greet me. And that's where my friendships formed after, so long. And so it's given me more than just music. It's given me friends and life and a purpose. And so like, I love jazz because it'll feed you back,
Nice. I like that. I like that. Absolutely. That it will feed you back. And you know what? I definitely then have to wonder in terms of Wycliffe. Certainly, you had mentioned that, in your household, gospel, classical. When did jazz speak to you, man?
Age 13, I had a great aunt that passed, and amongst the things bequeathed to our family was a 5-record collection set of jazz. It went from it was an anthology of jazz. I think Columbia or Sony put out. But early slave chants to the modern jazz at that time, which was you know, ragtime. You know, went through bebop, and it went up to the most modern was Sonny Rollins' "Sunny Moon for Two." And I remember on the big band side, Count basically playing the 2-bass hit. And I have to segue back into this jazz history tree. I think that's great. Thanks for sharing that. But there was one term I was looking at that I want us to be aware of, and why it is this way. In the early 1900s, it says Dixieland, and the reason they call it Dixieland is because I think it was Freddie Keppert. It was African-American jazz musician that had the opportunity to be the first recorder when the recording technology came in, but he didn't want anybody stealing his licks or hearing his music, which was very unfortunate because then the first band in the early 1920s recorded was the original Dixieland Jazz Band. And African-American musicians in New Orleans kind of despise that term. And I know that because even though I'm not from there, I talk with them all the time. They do not like the term Dixieland, even though it became popular. You know how the media works.
Right.
But they prefer to call it New Orleans jazz because that's what the style is. And even though those white musicians in the original Dixieland Jazz Band were the first ones to record, it kind of gave way to that name. But the African American musicians historically and even now they don't really like to use that term. So maybe we come up with a backslash or something because historically it's been accepted to be called because of the first recording by the Dixieland Jazz Band, but it's New Orleans music.
Yes.
Y'all know what Dixie means to folks in the South. I mean, it's part of the history.
Yes.
But anyway, I'm sorry because I want to say that.
No, Wycliffe, that's good. And Dakota, you heard what Wycliffe's comments, thoughts in terms of Dixieland and not using that particular term. Instead, let's say New Orleans music.
I actually agree with that. I use the term Dixieland only because it was, has been used to describe this music, which I missed a lot of what Wycliffe said, you can go back to Congo Square, but Dixieland really emerged around what's called Dixieland around the turn of the century. And I don't know if Wycliffe, obviously, the 20th century. And, and there was I mean, Wycliffe would know. I mean, there was what's called the Dixieland Revival in 1947. But I agree with you about that term. I want people to know what I'm talking about. That's the only reason I use it.
Gotcha.
So that's all I'm saying. And maybe we can put a slash. It was called Dixieland because the first group recorded was the original Dixieland Jazz Band. So that style became known as Dixieland, but it came out of New Orleans, and African American musicians in New Orleans.
And they were, by the way, Wycliffe. That band, they actually had the audacity. I'm sorry to jump in here, but they had the audacity to call themselves the original. My point exactly, but you didn't have anything before that. And the man that they could have recorded, I think it was Freddie Keppert, he refused to be recorded because, you all know what the deal is.
This is going on.
We didn't trust folks that were in those positions, and it still goes on now in terms of record companies. That's a conversation for another time. But that's why Freddie Keppert, he said, no, I'm not going to let you put my music on recording. And so, unfortunately, that first group they recorded was that white group, the original Dixieland Jazz Band. And therefore, that's why that term is used. So, I like to maybe see like a backslash or something like New Orleans / Dixieland because...
we can do that.
Okay.
Wycliffe, that's no. Great
Gotcha.
thing about electronic media.
Yeah,
All right.
very true. Very true.
And ownership. You know,
Say that, C. Kelly.
It's a living tree. It's a living tree, and it is our story, and we can control the narrative. They don't get to do that. So I love that you added that and added to the living nature of the tree. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Go ahead.
That's so important. The jazz history tree was done in part because a lot of stuff out there were written by white academics. I read something where some academics said the slaves got the drums from the military brass band, and I realized that we really needed more from our perspective.
Yeah,
this is written from our perspective. So I just wanted to make that point.
But put it out there, not just our perspective, the truth.
It is the truth. It's the truth.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. Well. Like I said, Tracy, we got a lively discussion, as you can see.
We do.
Oh,
And
it
I'm
got
very
hot.
happy to hear it. And
Listen,
I'm so happy to hear so many threads that feed right into the museum. I love what Wycliffe just said. It's the truth. And one of the things we say about the work we do at the Jazz Museum is we tell the truth about jazz. And it's not, everybody's not always happy to hear it, but we tell the truth about celebrating Black music and Black music that celebrates the Black experience. From Africa through the Caribbean, through the whole entire route of the slave trade. So it didn't just start in Africa and end up in New Orleans and Harlem. We talk about the whole, the entire roots R-O-U-T-E-S of jazz and what those influences are, and then what it looked like when it landed in New Orleans and traveled up to Harlem.
Gotcha. And you know what? I have to wonder in terms of Cali, in Cuba, in terms of the American music coming to the island and influence. It was R&B, or was the jazz artists who at the time, let's say in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, performing there, was that a big influence on the island and the music that came out?
Man, it goes even before that. There was a lot of, historically, there was a lot of plantation owners in Cuba that also own land in the U.S. And vice versa. People in New Orleans had businesses, and in the South, in the whole South of the U.S., had businesses going on between Cuba and what, eventually became the South of the U.S. So there was like seasonal trades between slaves, for example. One of, I don't know if you guys are aware of Louis Moral Goldschagg, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. It's one of the greatest American pianists of the and composers of the 19th century, and he used to travel a lot in the U.S., the Caribbean, and also Europe, and he used to spend a lot of time in Cuba. In the mid 19th century, he was hanging out with like all of the composers down there, like with Ignacio Cervantes, Manuel Saumel, Nicolás Espadero, all of those guys, and they were like exchanging information even back then already. And Goldschagg wrote a Cuban suite and a lot of like music that influenced ragtime later, but based on Cuban dances. So I wouldn't say the way I think like it's been like about 200 years now, so we can have perspective, and I wouldn't say that the way I like to see it nowadays is that we've been influencing each other constantly just because of a matter of geography, how close we are. We are 90 miles from the U.S. coast, right? I think it's been more of a exchange,
Mm-hmm.
a cultural exchange that has been going on. Because to say that Cuban music is being an influence in the US or the jazz or like other genres of like American music have been an influence in Cuba is minimizing the thing, in my opinion. I think like the whole area, and then you got to talk about Haiti too. You got to talk
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
Puerto Rico. You got to
Yes.
talk about Jamaica. I feel
Yeah.
like, and for me, New Orleans is one of my favorite cities because it reminds me of cities in Cuba. It reminds me of Santiago de Cuba. It's a Caribbean city, even if
Yes.
it is in the U.S. mainland.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it is part of a continuum. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Of a way bigger context, and I think that's why you got people like Dizzy Gillespie
Yes.
playing
Yes.
with Shano, and they are
Chano
speaking the
Pozo,
same.
yes.
They are
Yes.
playing the same language, you know. And then Mario Balsa was playing with with like Chip Webb, with Cap
Yes.
Calloway, with all of those cats. And I feel like because we share it all goes back to Africa, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Absolutely.
I was raised in the Yoruban tradition when I was a kid, and like,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize, man, because we will go to all of those like bata drums and like ceremonies. Later on, I hear like the swing patterns, the funk patterns, the salsa patterns, the song, all
Wow.
of that in those drums, you know. So I feel like it's like, of course, there's been, just to answer your question, of course, there's been influence from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and before, and there will be, you know, because we are so close.
I love it. I love it. And also on that note, Callie, give me a name or two of, let's say, artists or musicians who were big in Cuba but didn't necessarily make the transition into the States, who we may never have heard of.
Wow, that's a beautiful question. Man, I always tell people you gotta check Benny Moré
Mm,
out.
okay.
Like probably one of the best singers I ever heard in my life. But like,
So certainly we know of Celia Cruz, but this woman, you say, yeah? When was her timeline? When did she
Is
perform?
Benny Moré's
Benny.
timeline, the same actually than Celia Cruz. If I'm not
Ah,
mistaken, he was like only like a couple years older, and they were really good friends. Things
wow.
like Benny died early in the 1960s because he had problems with alcohol.
Gotcha,
So he
gotcha.
had cirrhosis.
Mm-hmm.
But man, he was like like a really big figure um, in the 40s, 50s, not only in Cuba but in the whole Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you are in Miami and you're listening to like traditional stations, you will hear his music. You
Got
know,
it. Got it. Okay.
he embodies the Cuban personality. Then another guy, wow, it's hard, that didn't make it to the US. Um, oh no, man, I think like probably I'm trying to think about this guy Chapotin,
Mm.
Felix Chapotin and Miguelito Cunri. That's a great duo there from the same time period. Felix Chapotin is like our Cuban, we call it like the Cuban Louis Armstrong. It's from the same time period. And he did a lot of innovations in the way the trumpet is played. And their style is really similar,
Mm-hmm.
even though they
Can you
really
spell his
didn't meet
name?
each other.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Felix
Okay.
Felix Chapotin. Yeah,
Nice. Nice.
Winton is always talking about him. It's like great guy, you know, like great guy that you should, you know, like, so like that Cuban sound in the trumpet that became the influence for the conjuntos of Arsenio Rodriguez, and it became an influence in like New York salsa later.
Mm-hmm.
That sound comes from like from Felix Chapotin.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Night Watchman, because we are kind of contemporaries in terms of schooling, right?
Yes.
And certainly one of the particular things I know, and this is from the 70s, when we saw jazz doing more what we call fusion. I have to actually get let's say some of you jazz guys, Wycliffe, your take.
But I have to say this, brother.
Go ahead.
I got some very traditional jazz training in school in the 70s.
You
I
did?
actually had I actually had a chance to play on stage with Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh,
wow.
I only play percussion. Not, I'm not, I hit my little clave, but it was a tribute to Shano Pozo, the legendary jazz
wow.
percussionist, and we had a chance. And the better story was I got a chance to hang out late night with Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh God, okay.
So that was definitely a high point. I've never been impressed with any celebrities after that. It's like I hung out with Dizzy, so
Oh God, I hear you.
I got a Dizzy story another time.
Go ahead.
We'll tell that story another time. Absolutely.
Well, I want to know these jazz artists in terms of when jazz has actually evolved, and please don't say devolved, because I know there's some purists that say, "Oh, it's devolved." Thoughts on when other aspects of music are incorporated into the straight ahead traditional style. Wycliffe?
Well, I mean, really, when you break it down, it's all a fusion of different things, styles. I don't know who can really be a purist in jazz, because jazz encompasses many different types of music. Whether it's not just a style, but when you bring those things together, jazz represents the best of what we as human beings have to offer. Now, that was put together out of what we went through in the United States. It was created here in America, where it only could be. But I think your question was about fusion and what we call fusion.
Right.
That's hard for me. I'm like Duke Ellington. There's two kinds of music: good kind and the other kind. He didn't say bad things about people.
Right.
He doesn't say bad things about music. You have what it is that you refer to. And I have children that are, that they play music now, and I'm always just trying to remind them, play what it is that you feel comfortable or the best express yourselves. Like one son was playing avant-garde. I don't have anything against it, but I can take about 5, maybe 10 minutes of that. It's just a preference. And it's not that it's bad music. Right. So when you start talking about fusion, okay, well, you put a little bit of this, you put a little bit of that, like potpourri or like a gumbo. If you're speaking of what it is that you come up with, but there are way too many categories. For me right now, I like good music, and
yes,
that is. Not to sound prophetic or anything, it's for the soul. But I tell students all the time, we don't play to serve ourselves. Yeah, I want to, work on my licks, my chops, and I want to do what I'm going to do. But my job, our job is for other people. And the last thing that I'll say, in fear of not really answering your question, I had a student tell me last week. He said, a couple of weeks ago, he said, when I get a compliment from somebody in the audience, I take it lightly. I'd rather hear from, a musician or someone that's studied. And I said to him, I said, I would really encourage you to change that, because if somebody said that they like your music, that meant that you did something for them. Like some people coming to your concert, that may be the best thing that happened to them all day, all week. And so, and if it's a good musician, they're not going to be at your gig anyway. Musicians, so likely what it is that you're, when you're playing. If somebody gives you a compliment, that means that you've lifted their spirits, you've enlightened them in some kind of way, and never take any compliment for granted just because you're not a studied musician. Again, and if people don't like your playing, they're not gonna say anything. So anyway, when it comes to fusion, if you're going at it for the right reason, let me take the best of this and the best of that, and then make the best of it what I can. I mean, I can deal with that. Of course, I have my preferences. I love I forget the young lady that said she grew up in the funk era and sang soul. I soul music, even when it comes to rap and hip hop. I like Curtis Blow. I like the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yes.
And I can check out some of the stuff that's happening now, but all of it is a fusion of kind of what's to come. But so anyway, I'll stop there.
Nice. And certainly, Tracy, you're from my era as well, so we know going up there.
Telling people how old I am.
Right.
Watch yourself, Chris.
So going to hang out at Tufts, and I got to say this, Albert. So my first station, when I first got into jazz, right? Oh, can I say this, NightWatchman? Can we say CD 101 smooth jazz?
Oh, what happened to WRVR? Huh?
WRVR, that's right.
Wow. Okay.
For the old WLIB.
WLIB.
WLIB-FM, WBLS. Come on.
I'm just saying my first experience. So it was that. Then I discovered a little bit later on, not too far off, Albert, WBGO. And so I credit you guys with really, really, developing my taste for the classics, for straight ahead. So I thank you for that. Hearing Wycliffe, it all stems from, I guess, a common branch here. Are there components of jazz that you don't particularly care for?
Is that for Al or for Tracy?
You know what? You can jump in there too, Tracy. You got something?
Well,
Go ahead,
I thought you were asking Wycliffe.
No.
Oh no! You know what? I'll say this, and I'll be quiet.
Okay.
It's because we just had an expert at our school to talk about. When you start dealing with music, and music is very popular or well known, and when money comes in, things always get a little skewed because it's one moment. But we're jazz musicians. Yes. We don't. With the way I played today, I may play the same song tomorrow. It's not going to be the same. So it's like I heard this definition of a groove versus a beat. A groove grows and evolves. A beat is one moment in the life of a groove. So when you're dealing with music that you like a man, when you said something about smooth jazz, I don't hate on it.
Okay.
It has a large audience, but that's like smooth jazz to me is on the way to jazz, and it doesn't.
Gotcha.
That is stagnant. It's one part, one small part of jazz because it has elements of improvisation. But a lot of time when they do those shows, I did the Smooth Jazz Cruise. It was great. But they do the show same way.
Gotcha.
I played with David Sanborn, who I love. But for 5 years, we played the same show, same order. And
Gotcha.
It wasn't a bad thing because we, the musicians, we could, when it came time to improvise or to play, we can create things, but it's the same show, same thing.
Gotcha.
I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind.
Okay.
If we're talking about jazz, not just jazz artists, but the people who work behind the scenes like me, jazz administrators, people who are helping to keep the music alive, always have this debate about smooth jazz, and CD 101.9 in New York in particular always comes up.
Yes.
And when we talk about, and I love that Wycliffe referred to the Duke Ellington quote that I repeat all the time. There's only two kinds of music: good music and bad music. And in my opinion, smooth jazz, there are lots of people who have biases for and against it, but what it is a way to maintain and grow an audience for jazz. And as people complain that we use all these words, the jazz audience is a niche audience. The jazz genre is a niche genre. Jazz is fading. There's no real market for jazz. All of that may or may not be true, But another truth is that smooth jazz, fusion, anything that is considered more commercial is a way for regular folks like me to begin to appreciate and to understand elements of jazz and to see themselves in their own taste reflected in the music. And I love the question about avant-garde and what do you like and what it doesn't really matter. What matters is what speaks to you and how and when you see yourself reflected in what you're hearing.
Gotcha.
And what tempts you, what lures you into wanting to hear more and explore other kinds or other ways of expressing the music, and in which you can see yourself and your tastes and your experiences reflected. And I love that you talked about these stations, WRVR, WLI, these and WPLS in particular. Frankie Crocker was a genius in in many ways, but in the way that he could bring you music that you had not only never heard of, but never conceived of.
Right.
And if only because you could find the beat that was part of that groove, you became a part of that experience.
True. And you know what? Thinking about what Tracy just said, C. Kelly, well, smooth jazz, was that something that spoke to you coming from the R&B background?
What Tracy said was kind of brilliant because it is like a beginner's class for jazz. It's like, I like jazz. I don't think I like jazz, but I think I like some music.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I believe that knowledge breeds appreciation. So the more I know about a thing, the more I'm going to like that thing or understand that thing or, feel like I can speak on that thing. So no matter where a person gets in, I think they're in. And that's a good start, and it's a great way to get them, on the journey. So I'm for it. Smooth jazz is actually jazz to someone who doesn't understand it at all. So they don't even know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, I do like jazz. I like that. I got that Sanborn album.
Yes. So it must speak to you, Callie. Are there some forms?
Can we wait? Stop. Let's move off of smooth jazz a little bit because we're really starting to fracture what's on the tree. What I liked about what we were talking about earlier is that it's a continuum, and so we started out. You talked about fusion, which is not the same as smooth jazz,
right? I agree.
Said that your journey started at CD 101.9. That's not true because I know you had Herbie Hancock's Chameleon. I know you had Al Jarreau. I know you had a whole bunch of acts, Lonnie Liston Smith, and all those albums in the 70s that predated CD 101 and Miles.
NightWatchman, you're right.
Miles
Guilty.
pioneered all that by just again, music evolves, it changes. It influences other styles, and it influenced the R&B. All the R&B grands we grew up with had horn sections. That didn't come from nowhere. That came from jazz. The hip hop that we grew up with, Rakim, and him changing the rhythms of the beats because he grew up listening to Coltrane. So jazz, let's also talk about the influence that jazz has had on all music that we listen to. And smooth jazz is like I loved what Wycliffe said about the groove versus the beat, and smooth jazz is a photograph, and we're looking at film and video.
Okay.
I want to do a shameless plug right here because coming up next week you can get all of this music.
Oh, really? Do tell.
Yes. Okay. The Harlem Jazz Club revival.
All right.
It's coming up. It's April 14th through the 23rd. and we have 18 venues that have signed on to
Harlem venues.
Harlem venues.
Harlem
Yes.
venues. Okay. Okay.
35 events. No, I'm sure
40
it's
events.
probably 40 by now.
Yes.
More than 80 musicians, and it's going to be a great time.
And do tell, see Kelly. So if we go to the website of Harlem Late Night Jazz, we can find out about it, correct?
Yes, HarlemLateNightJazz.org will lead you right there. It's the Harlem Jazz Club Revival, and you hit that tab, and it will open up a whole world in 10 days.
Ooh.
Can I jump in there for a second?
Yes, you can.
You know, it's really a big step toward fulfilling our mission, and the reception that we've gotten from Harlem venues, including the Jazz Museum in Harlem, by the way, has been tremendous.
Beautiful.
So we're really proud of this, and I got Wycliffe and Kelly sitting around here.
Shoot!
It's 10 days of events, and one I want to point out is that New Amsterdam Music Association, which has Association for Black Musicians in the United States, founded in 1904 by the likes of Hubie Blake and James Reed Stewart and those guys.
Wow.
And on the 19th is a Wednesday. We're holding what we call the Masters Jam of the Century. We have two bands, you know, Frank Lacey's band and Ray Blue, and so forth, 20 heavy hitters, you know, I don't even want to name names, right? Like Reggie and a lot of people.
Nice.
If you guys are available, it's a flashback. It's 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., right?
Okay.
Wow.
Late night back to Harlem that night.
Okay. What you said, the 19th?
The 19th, yes.
The
Okay.
19th, Wednesday the 19th.
Okay.
Incredible.
Everybody's going to be there.
All I gotta say is that, you know, Dakota and C. Kelly, last time I was hanging with you guys, you jazz folk, you guys can do it all night.
That's why they call them the late night jazz, you know.
Yes,
understood.
And me being the night watchman, I need to show up.
I'll be looking for you, Bob.
I'll be there. New Amsterdam Music Association, just a couple of blocks away from me. So,
see, there you go.
Yep.
Well,
hey, Wycliffe, you may not know it, but I got your number. But Kelly, I don't have your number.
Yes.
Fix that.
Callie, we need your number.
All right, but not on the air. We could take care of that after the show.
Okay.
We don't want your stalkers all calling you up out of the blue.
No, we don't want that.
Absolutely. Do tell us, Callie, you have any dates we should know about upcoming?
Well, yeah, I have a couple things. Next week, actually, I'm playing at Berlin. This writer,
beautiful,
TJ English. I don't know if you guys know about him. He writes a lot about the mob, actually. And he's got like a book on the mob and jazz, which is actually pretty good. And so he's presenting Latin All-Star group in the Berlin Theater.
Nice.
And I'm playing Friday and Saturday there, and then I'm playing with Carlos Enriquez big band on Sunday, next Sunday.
So
I think it's the 16th at This Is playing at This Is like it's like actually talking about the founders of like what is become to be known as Latin jazz. We are doing a tribute to Mario Bauza. Which was like Machito's musical director for like, I don't know, 30, 40 years, something like that. And actually the guy that introduced Chano to DC, matter of fact.
One of the creators of Afro-Cuban, I would say. I would say he'd be one of the heroes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is one of those guys that you have to like, you know, check out, definitely. And so they are, I think, celebrating his induction into the Aragon Hall of Fame there at Jazz at Lincoln Center. There's gonna be a concert. I'm gonna be doing that, and then you know I'm always like doing something.
Okay.
That's like the as close as I can get, you know. Like if I keep going, I think I'm doing this. There is another tribute to Tito Puente and Tito Rodriguez coming out soon with Carlos too at the Rose Theater.
Oh
Yeah, that's
yes.
also going on. So
Beautiful.
Ali
Congrats.
is also going to be the first band leader of the National Jazz Museum in Harlem's house band.
Ah,
All
congrats.
Yeah,
thank you.
we'll launch our house band in August. During every August, the National Jazz Museum in Harlem celebrates the Afro-Latin roots of jazz. And this year we will feature our house band that we've been working on and trying to create for a couple of years. And so we're really excited about that.
Love
and if
it.
you go to jmih.org/events, you'll see our upcoming list of events. And one of the things, wrong one. We pride ourselves on is we work really hard to collaborate. Dakota mentioned working with us, and we're happy to work with them. We are on April 22nd. We'll be launching our first partnership with Harlem Derby.
Oh.
The Harlem Derby actually runs on May 6th with the Kentucky Derby, and
Kentucky, yes,
of the Black jockeys who
wow,
and made records with the Kentucky Derby. But on April 22nd, we will be having a pop-up shop where you can come and listen. It's called Hats, Juleps, and Jazz. Come and listen to some jazz, drink some juleps, and buy some hats. And in May, we're doing The Look of Jazz with Tyson Hall and an Elmo Hope Centennial Celebration with Bertha Hope.
Nice.
Our second Jazz is Now Fellows will be celebrated in May. In June, we'll be celebrating Juneteenth at the Jackie Robinson Bandshell on June 17th.
Wow.
And Kali mentioned Haiti. We'll be saluting Haiti and jazz in our collaboration with JAI, the Jean Apollon Expressions Dance Company, Haitian Folkloric Dance Company, and jazz. So we've got a lot of things coming up that are really different looks, different jazz from different perspectives.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I have to then know, Wycliffe, what you got cooking in terms of this upcoming season, man?
Well, as most of you know, or if you don't, I left New York in 2016. I moved back down to Georgia. So I think all the events you all are speaking of are mainly New York events. But if you want to find out where I'm playing and or performing, I do have some of those. I have all of those dates, the public ones, on my website. But the next time I'm in New York, it's still, I'm going to be at Dizzy's with Victor Goins, who wrote a suite for Woodlawn, where we have a lot of our great jazz musicians that laid to rest there. That's July, I think, 12th through the 15th or 16th. Then I'm possibly going to be at Birdland with my band August 4th through the 6th. And I just looked at something I received from Robin Bell Stevens. She's asking about the weekend of the 12th. We'll be celebrating, I think, the 59th anniversary of, Jazz Mobile. And
yes.
I have a, great relationship with them. They have a few events that are coming up. But in the spirit of collaboration, we did a project back in 2011 that spawned. I'd written for film before, but this is my second Oscar Me Show film within our gates, and it was really a great commission because it opened my eyes to just more historical perspective of African Americans in this country, and that was Oscar Me Show's response to D.W. Griffith's.
Birth of the Nation. Yes, that racist film.
The White House. Anyway, I won't get into it. But, Robin did ask me to mention a few things, like because of their relationship, and Dr. Billy Taylor. This sounds like everyone that's on this call is a part of that.
Yes.
That jazz tree, and the branches and the roots are all connected. But Chardonnay Wade is performing on the 12th of April. That's coming up soon.
Yeah.
The 14th, Omar Edwards with Jazz on Tap.
Yes.
With Harper on April the 23rd. And their Summerfest is going to be
nice.
2nd through September 24th.
Beautiful.
And July is the 59th anniversary of Jazz Mobile. As NEA Jazz Master, Dr. Billy Taylor, who's the administrator who started it all. So I'm not in New York anymore, but I feel like I'm still there in spirit. But every time I come back, I'm not in New York 2 hours, and I'm just like, but there's no place like New York City, and I think it's great to have this, conglomeration of people to talk about jazz,
yes,
history,
yes,
put it in the light and tell the truth, not just from our perspective, but from just the perspective of truth and how this music can come about and how it still grows and evolves. So
absolutely. Wycliffe, thank you for that. And so, Night Watchman, you hear that? No more Dixieland. You remember that? Okay.
Of course, the New Orleans Jazz. Why did you say it again?
hey, can I throw in another little commercial?
Go ahead.
Yeah. We are giving this Harlem Club Revival the first annual, and we see this happening every year around this time, bringing focus to Harlem. But I want to mention we're up 5 days a week every week in clubs in Harlem. And our mission is to keep live music alive. And I want everyone to be aware of our ongoing calendar.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that point before we,
Okay. Well,
about that.
Thank you. Night Watchman, you want to take us home?
Well, first of all, thank you all for joining us. If you didn't know before you watched this show, jazz is alive and well. It's also back out of the pandemic. There's plenty of jazz for you to partake of this year. So you want to go to those sites, harlemlatenightjazz.org, jmih.org/events. jazzmobile.org. All these sites can keep you up and running. There's also the Blue Note Jazz Festival is coming in. So everybody, you need to jump out there and absorb all the jazz that you missed for the last 3 years. It's time to stock up on your jazz. So you've been listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. You can find us playing on Monday nights, 7 o'clock on the radio. We stream live on YouTube and Facebook at 8 p.m. And then you can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Amazon Music, Apple Music, Google Music, Spotify, Anchor FM. You can ask Alexa to play the latest Soul Lounge Primetime podcast. You can ask Siri, play the latest Soul Lounge Primetime podcast, and we're in your home. So
that's right. Yes.
So check us out Monday nights. We're here. We bring you the best of Harlem. We bring you the best of
worldwide,
everything.
baby.
Worldwide, baby. So
that's right.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again. And we'll see you out there in the late night at some of these shows.
That's right, but not too late. Go ahead, Wycliffe. Do a blow. Yeah, baby.
Callie, you got something for us too?
Yeah, well, give me a second.
All right.
Hey, Wycliffe, you're gonna be at the Jazz Fest in New Orleans, right?
I'm not there this year.
Man.
Pandemic, but they'll call me back eventually. I'll be somewhere.
All right.
Yes, you will. Right. That's right. Like a shark, you got to keep moving, or else you die. That's it. So keep moving. Yes. All right. Well, this has been great, Albert. As a freshman to this particular format, did you dig it?
I did.
All right.
You could use another hour though, because there's so much to talk
about.
So much,
absolutely.
So much.
Just a little addition. I don't know if you've listened to Rhiannon Giddens, but she's a singer of American music. She's also a fantastic banjo player.
Oh,
and
wow.
to the topic that Wycliffe was talking before about Dixieland,
Yes.
somehow the banjo is a black instrument.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Appalachian.
Absolutely.
She's kind of
Absolutely.
bringing that back, and she's wonderful.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent. Okay.
Callie,
Callie, blow,
take us
my
out.
brother. Take us out. Yeah.
That's bad, man. I like it.